fucking trumpets. You've got to love those trumpets.
You'll share man's greatest thrill.
They've tried and failed.
They've tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Hi everyone, just a quick intro here. This is episode 6 of the Scratchcast, the alternative pop culture podcast. This episode is part 2 of our countdown of our top 20 favourite albums of all time. So if you haven't checked out episode 5, aka part 1, please go back and listen to that because it includes our picks for numbers 20 through 11. This episode counts down our top 10 albums of all time. Enjoy and please check out some of these albums. I've also pulled together a playlist which you'll find on the episode page or in the episode description. Okay, we're into the top 10 now. So my number 10 is a self-titled album from Justice. So Justice are basically a French electro house band. If you were to think of Daft Punk, you wouldn't be too far off, but I would say Justice just hit that a little bit harder. The album is sometimes called Cross. Like I say, it's their self-titled album, but it's a black cover with a big gold cross on the front of it, like
the XX album.
No, a cross as in like the crucifix.
Right.
So it's sometimes called Cross. It was released in 2007, and like I say, it does sound a little bit like Daft Punk, but quite a bit harder. If you've ever heard the song, I think it's called "We Are Your Friends," and it's by Justice versus Simeon. Simeon are another sort of electro dance band, but they're very different, and I could have checked them both these bands out on the basis of that song, and Simeon got binned and Justice were the ones that stuck. And I mean, I think most of that is down to the bass lines. That "We Are Your Friends" has got quite a sort of a very memorable bass line, and that's present in a lot of the songs on this album. There's also a little bit of a classical theme and biblical theme in terms of the album art and the some of the names of the songs. The opening track is Genesis. There's a song called Waters of Nazareth, so there's a sort of biblical theme, but they're just sort of, for the most part, sort of really heavy sort of EDM music with some classical influences but sort of really cool bass lines. I've kind of written here that imagine if Mozart or Beethoven did EDM. I don't know how accurate that is, but certainly on the opening track Genesis, which has got a really sort of there's a big string section on it and stuff, that is quite an appropriate description. But songs like Let There Be Light that's got really heavy bass grooves and sort of chirping electronic noises, and even when it's kind of at its heaviest and noisiest, it's still got that really sort of danceable groove to it, and it's just the bass and the drums just really hit very hard. It's like, I saw Justice at Mad Cool Festival in Madrid in 2018, I think it was.
Right, okay.
And they, when I saw them, you could feel the bass vibrating through the ground and up through your feet. It's a huge sound. So it's not all just kind of big heavy bass. There's a song called DANCE, or Dance, which is it's almost it sounds like it's almost something the Jackson 5 would have written. It's got these sort of juvenile kind of vocals, like a young Michael Jackson or whatever, but it's delivered over like a funk bass, and there's sort of Daft Punk-esque kind of synths. There's The Party, which sounds a bit like the song Fuck the Pain Away by Peaches, in terms of its sort of vocal delivery. And there's a song called DVNO, which has got more vocals on it. For the most part, it's an instrumental album, but these are some of the vocal moments that stick out. DVNO, the vocals are slightly strained and take a little bit of getting used to, but it's a very cool song. There's lots of kind of crackling electronics and sort of decaying electronic sounds all over the place on this album. Songs like Valentine is quite a sort of delirious, happy sort of track, but there's just like that subtle tinge of melancholy in the delivery. And some of the heaviest tracks are Waters of Nazareth that I mentioned before, and a song called Stress. And Stress is very aptly named because it is just a series of very stressful noises, but it's just got this insane bass line that once it kicks in, it's just impossible not to move to, despite how abrasive the sounds you're hearing are. That bass groove, you just can't not move to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very cool album, really cool, really hard hitting. If you like bass, it's going to be for you. And it's just a really good example of heavy electronic music that's catchy enough for people that aren't necessarily fans of EDM to get into, because I'm not a hard electro or electronic dance music kind of guy. I think there are albums I've talked about that have got hints of that on them, so I'm a fairly casual kind of listener. This is the most sort of dedicated EDM sort of album that I listen to, but it's absolutely fantastic. And I think Justice should be I think they're a pretty huge band, but I think they should have, when you talk about the likes of Daft Punk, I think Justice should be right up there next to them.
Yeah. Did you say that there's a song in there called Dance?
Yeah, it's called Dance, but it's like D-A-N-C-E, and it's like the lyrics like, do the D-A-N-C-E 1 2 3 4 5.
Yeah, I know that song, and I would have thought that it just shows you.
Sounds like Daft Punk.
It sounds like Daft Punk. I mean, I'm not familiar with kind of Justice's material, but if somebody was to ask me who wrote Dance or who released Dance, I would have absolutely said Daft Punk.
Yeah, I think most people probably would, and there's a lot of similarities there, but Dance is probably their most famous song. It's just a fantastic album. So it was a self-titled album by Justice.
Cool. So, my number 10, again, it's one of these albums that I needed to include somewhere in my kind of top 20 picks, and it's Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd.
Okay.
Again, very much like the Sex Pistols, it's a band that needs no introduction. I think certainly an album that probably doesn't need any introduction. I think it's one of those albums that are consistently rated as one of the kind of best albums of all time. It was released in 1973. It contains 10 songs and is approximately 42 minutes and kind of 53 seconds long. It's the 8th studio album from the band, and was released 4 years after the departure of Sid Barrett, who was one of the founding members. And he left the band after his mental health started to deteriorate. And he continued to have mental health difficulties throughout the course of his life. And the album kind of explores a lot of those issues. Kind of the opening track, Speak to Me, which only lasts, like, it's just over a minute long. You hear a lot of people speaking, and at one point you hear somebody say, I know I'm mad, I've always been mad, and like I said, they continue to explore that theme throughout the course of the album. And again, I would say it's very much a kind of concept album, although unlike, say, the likes of American Prayer, I think there are songs that you could pick out and listen to individually. But after the kind of the intro, as I just mentioned, the songs seem to just melt into each other effortlessly. David Gilmour's vocals, but in particular his guitar, and the range of texture that the rest of the band provide on this album. I mean, it's just great, but I think in particular Richard Wright, who's the kind of synth or organ player, just takes you to another place. I've described it as transcendental, which
good fitting.
Yeah, I don't think it's really all that too much of a kind of overestimation that you just can't help but come immersed in. And I think this album very much has provided the blueprint for prog rock since. It's great. Like I said, there's a few songs that you could pick out and listen to individually. Time being one of them. It's kind of a well-known Pink Floyd song. Roger Waters provides a pretty funky bass on there. Same with Money. But yeah, definitely one that you kind of need to listen to.
Time and Money are the sort of ones that I know. I don't think I've actually listened to this the whole way through. Pink Floyd have never been a band I was all that into, but like Time and Money are both really good tunes. And I think I'm not that big a fan of like prog, even though I've got 2 prog albums on my list. They're slightly different, but
To be honest, neither am I. But I can't deny the kind of influence that this album had in my life at one point.
Yeah.
We listened to it a lot. I lived with two pretty big prog rock fans, Healed and later McGill, who would often play a lot of the kind of guitar riffs himself from the likes of Dark Side of the Moon. And for me, it was a toss-up of whether or not to include this or another one of the band's albums called Medal. You ever heard of that?
No, never heard of it.
So the album art just looks like, if you put paint into water and then put a sheet of paper into it, and the paint kind of just sticks and it gets that kind of marbled effect.
Okay.
That's what the album cover looks like. I've got it on vinyl, and I'm not particularly enamoured with side 1. There's maybe only like 5 or 6 tracks in there, maybe more. I'm not particularly enamoured with it, but on the other side there's Echoes, which is just phenomenal. Again, it's one of these long tracks. Again, it's probably similar in length to No Effects of Decline that we mentioned earlier on. I think it is a good 18 minutes long, and was featured in Stanley Kubrick's film Space Odyssey 2001.
Okay.
And it's just brilliant. I mean, there's a good 3-4 minutes in that track where it just sounds as if they've inserted whale sounds, which is quite difficult to digest, but it's still a fantastic song. But I think overall, if I was to pick an album that's kind of great from start to finish, it would have to be Dark Side of the Moon.
Nice, okay.
So
it's Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. Okay, my number 9 is Songs for the Deaf by Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah.
So this came out in 2002, and admittedly I haven't heard every Queens of the Stone Age album, but this is definitely my favourite, and I think as far as what I've heard, in my opinion, it's better than anything before or after. So it's just this really cool, like, desert rock odyssey. And I think it kind of marked Queens of the Stone Age out as one of the coolest bands in existence at the time it came out. And it's just phenomenal. I mean, the first track, You Think I Ain't Worth a Dollar But I Feel Like a Millionaire, is absolutely brutal. It's just got really savage vocals, big heavy riffs, and like Josh Homme's like crazy noodling guitar lines. And I mean, that's the opening track, and then the album ends on there's actually a secret track. It's called Mosquito Song. It's one of those secret tracks you used to get on CDs where you'd wait a couple of minutes and then another song would play.
Yeah.
And Mosquito Song is sort of melancholic acoustic track that turns into this big bombastic kind of brass-filled monster at the end. But like I said, it's an odyssey. It goes on that sort of journey. I mean, everyone who's ever listened to music ever will know the song No One Knows. It's absolutely iconic at this point. Just mad stabbing guitars, grumbling bass. There's that huge moment where the bass and the guitar solos kind of duel one another. It's just a genius track. It might be a touch overplayed at this stage, but the testament to that song is it's still good, even with the amount of airtime it has had. One of the sort of coolest things on this album is like there's little snippets of radio, like you're listening to, you know, a radio station on a sort of road trip through the desert or something, and that for that reason it's a perfect album for a road trip. Some of the other songs people will recognise straight away are First It Giveth and Go With The Flow, but real standouts are the likes of Song for the Dead, which has got a weird sort of B-movie, monster movie synth at the start of it, which gives away to this sort of grinding electric guitar and just a mad sort of technical drum solo with sort of strange timings, and it sort of loops that until it kicks in with these haunting ooh and ah vocals, sort of squealing guitar fills, and I would say that's probably the best song on the album. It's so inventive. There's so many cool things going on. There's even some sort of Latin grooves and 60s kind of rock and roll aesthetic on Another Love Song, which is probably the poppiest track on the album. And there's other, there's equally as catchy songs like God Is in the Radio, which has got some even sort of doo-wop kind of style vocals amongst the kind of rolling bass, keyboards and stabbing guitars. So this is an album I've listened to a lot, and it just never gets old. So that's Songs for the Deaf by Queens of the Stone Age.
I don't know what you'd call this. I don't know if it'd be serendipity or coincidence, I don't know. But number 9 for me is Josh Homme's wife's band's album. So Josh Homme's wife, Brodie Dahl, or I think she still goes by Brodie Dahl, but presumably her name is
Brodie Homme.
Brodie Homme. She was once in a band called Distillers. I think they reformed fairly recently, and they're kind of still making some new material. But my number 9 is their second studio album, Sing Sing Death House. That was released on the 12th of February in 2002.
Same year as Songs for the Deaf as well?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I saw the Distillers play at the Barrowlands. It was one of the first big bands that I went to see at the Barrowlands in Glasgow. And interestingly, she was married to Rancid's lead vocalist Tim Armstrong at the time. However, when I saw them play the Barrowlands in Glasgow, they had the Eagles of Death Metal supporting them.
Okay.
And Josh Homme was in the Eagles of Death Metal. I still think he has a part to play. And I think they got together during that tour.
Okay.
So the story goes, obviously I have no idea, but I remember at the time it kind of divided fans. Like you had your Distillers fans and your Rancid fans, and you couldn't like them both, which is obviously a lot of nonsense. But anyway, like I said, it was released on the 12th of February 2002, 12 songs, and it's just under the kind of 30-minute mark. I think I initially fell in love with this album, and Distillers as a whole, really, after watching the video of City of Angels.
Okay.
Again, either on P-Rock or Kerrang at the time. The Young Crazed Peeling was also on there as well, and I just had to go out and find the album after that. I think it was most likely another Sound and Vision purchase from Elgin. I mean, I've mentioned Distillers previously when we were reviewing the likes of Amel and the Snuffers and Press Club, and it's because it's the Distillers is another example of a kind of female fronted punk band, and interestingly, Brodie Dahl in and of herself is originally from Australia.
Okay.
So she's originally from Fitzroy area in Melbourne, and I really dig her kind of vocal delivery. It's raspy, it kind of breaks from time to time, there's a kind of raw intensity about there, and I would say kind of more importantly, there's a kind of an attitude and kind of boldness about it that kind of really ignites the songs that they have on there, such as the likes of kind of Sick of It All, which is actually the opening track of the album, which comes complete with this kind of trebly, pulsating bass line that just kind of rattles and shakes throughout the song. And there's instances of that kind of bass throughout the course of the album. Other songs to look out for on there is I'm a Revenant, which is the second song from the album, which contains a kind of fantastic call and answer section where the rest of the band starts screaming, you know, do you remember the rage? And Brodie Dahl comes back saying, I remember the hate, I remember it rained for years and the blood had left a stain. I just really like it. And you know, there's quite a few kind of call and answer sections throughout the course of the album where, you know, they're kind of shouting back and forth to each other. It's really good. Obviously, you've got the kind of two singles, The Young Crazed Peeling, City of Angels, which I imagine most people really dig. But the song that really kind of stood out for me is Bullet in the Bullseye. And like I said, you see the kind of return of that kind of frantic bass line and screaming lyrics. The lyrics in the song being, or the kind of chorus being, I'm the bullet, you're the bullseye, and when I hit, there's nothing left. And again, that's delivered in this kind of really shouty way that's just epic. Again, it's just another kind of perfect example of kind of one of those bands that appeared out of the kind of American punk rock scene that kind of exploded in the kind of late 90s and early noughties. The first album is also really worth checking out. I'm pretty sure it's self-titled. and it's worth checking out if only for the opening track, which is called Oh Serena, but also there's a really good song in there called Ask the Angels, which is track number 6 in the album, and I believe it's the cover of a Patti Smith song, but there's a really cool kind of guitar riff in it that I just love, I absolutely love. So yeah.
So it's Distillers?
It's the Distillers with Sing Sing Death House.
Cool, okay. My number 8 is self-titled album from Fleet Foxes. This came out in 2008. So I've kind of gone from gothic pop punk to electro house to desert rock, and now I'm on to stripped back acoustic folk with the debut album from Fleet Foxes, who are from Seattle, who happened to be another band that I saw at the Mad Cool Festival I mentioned earlier with Justice. Unfortunately, when I saw them, it was to a fairly kind of sparse and unresponsive crowd, but in the early evening sun they were really quite incredible. This album in particular is just a thing of beauty. It's just full of acoustic guitar melodies and like beautiful vocal harmonies, and like lots of different styles of percussion, but the sort of drumming and things is quite restrained as to not kind of take over the rest of the music. I originally was hooked into this band by a song called White Winter Hymnal, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but it's got this really hooky chorus which is like, it goes, I was following the pack all swallowed in their coats, the scarves of red tied round their throats to keep their little heads from falling in the snow. And it's just what the lyrics in some of these songs really mean, I've no idea, but I just like they seem to tell these little stories, and they give you these really strong kind of visuals to go along with the music. That's the kind of song that really piqued my interest in Fleet Foxes. And there's songs like Ragged Wood, which has got a really sort of joyous stomp to it. There's Tiger Peasant Song, which is really gloomy with sort of aching vocals. There's a stirring He Doesn't Know Why, and these are all the kind of moments that keep me coming back to this album. It's simply stunning, to be honest, and it's a debut album from the frontman Robin Pecknold. He made it when he was like 23 or something like that, and it's a really kind of accomplished piece of music. And there's a follow-up to this called Helplessness Blues, which is kind of more of the same, but I don't think it's as good. And there was a more recent one called Crack Up, which I think came out in 2017, which is a lot more experimental. I think it has been critically acclaimed, but for my personal tastes, I just couldn't quite get into it. It doesn't quite have the same immediacy that this album has. I think if you are interested in bands like Mumford & Sons, you might like this. It's not really like Mumford & Sons, but it's got that same kind of folky, melodic kind of style. There's no banjos on this, unfortunately. But I think people who do like Mumford & Sons would probably like this, but in my opinion this is far, far better than what they do. But yeah, this is it's a fantastic album that I keep going back to. That's the self-titled album by Fleet Foxes.
Fleet Foxes are a band, again, I've been aware of, and I remember you speaking to me quite a lot, but they just completely passed me by. But it's maybe worthwhile revisiting, because I do like Mumford & Sons.
I just use that as a kind of example. It's not really like Mumford & Sons, but I think it's something that you might like.
Yeah.
But it's a good album just to listen to from start to finish. It kind of just washes over you, and it just leaves you a kind of a nice feeling after you've listened to it.
It's interesting because it's a band that, like I said, like I've been aware of, and I remember because the kind of album art, for some reason, I just remember thinking it looked quite old-fashioned.
It's
have they kind of appropriated an old painting or something?
It's like an old paint. Yeah, I think they have. I can't remember what it is, but you're right. It is.
It's like a village scene or something.
It is an old painting by quite a famous artist, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it is. But it's got that sort of old artwork, and it's actually, I mean, the sound of the album is it's got a relatively lo-fi production as well, so that the vocals can be a bit sort of crusty at times. So I think it gives it that kind of sort of timeless sound to it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Self-titled by Fleet Foxes.
So my number 8 was You're a Woman, I'm a Machine by Death from Above 1979.
Nice.
Is it worthwhile me talking about it? Or do you think we've kind of covered it?
I think we kind of covered it, but just, a quick summary of...
I don't think I've got anything down here that I haven't said before. Obviously, I've kind of referenced kind of Turn It Out, the kind of opening track of the album, which, I was in agreement with yourself. I've described it as truly an assault on the senses. Starts with that kind of discordant kind of piano, squealing guitar / bass sounds. At the time I thought it was a guitar, however, as we kind of later find out, it is just a kind of, they are just a two-piece band, and it is just a drummer and a bassist, and a grueling drum beat that just doesn't give up is how I've described it. And I've described it as just kind of keeps hitting you like a slap to the face.
Yeah.
Probably more like a punch to the face, really. And it really provides you with a taster of kind of what's to come throughout the rest of the album. And then, as you did yourself, Sneds kind of picked out in Romantic Rights, and I think it's the second track on the album. And as we've said, they're kind of described this kind of noise punk, dance punk band, and I would say that kind of description of them being dance punk is perfectly illustrated by the likes of Romantic Rights.
Yeah.
We kind of mentioned the kind of bass on that song in particular, and being a bassist at the time, I very much wanted to emulate that kind of sound.
But it's impossible. It's like such a unique sound.
It's just fantastic, and then there's this kind of, they introduce kind of this kind of vamping kind of synthy sound. There's kind of hand claps in there as well, and as I said, it accumulates into this sort of kind of dance punk sound that I just really dug and never get tired of listening to. As we said, there is some respite from that kind of sound in the form of the kind of softer side of things, such as in the bridge of an outro of Blood on Our Hands, which, as we've said, is kind of one of the singles that was released from the album, is kind of track number 5. Similar on the Black History Month, which, I would agree with, is this kind of brooding, atmospheric song. And again, I made particular mention of kind of Sexy Results, which, as I said, I found is kind of very reminiscent of the likes of kind of Air's Sexy Boy.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that they kind of speak in French at the start is maybe a reference to that, but yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I think it's worth pointing out that it's kind of mental that a two-piece can make such a racket, I suppose.
I remember me and you went to, I think it was a Battle of the Bands night in Cafe Drummond's in Aberdeen. Yeah. And there was this one band in particular. They were pretty much the same setup as Death from Above. Like, it was a bassist and a drummer. And it might have even been the drummer that sang as well. I can't really remember. I can't remember what they're called, but I know I've got their CD. Like, I've got their demo CD somewhere. God knows what happened to them. But I remember you were asking the women at the merch table, or I was asking them at the merch table, like, the bands that were kind of influenced, what kind of bands they were influenced by, and she was rattling off all these bands, and you just kept saying Death from Above, Death from Above, Death from Above, Death from Above. It's just didn't take you on at all.
I was pretty drunk, to be fair.
Yeah,
I remember that. So cool. It's a good album. I like that we've both got it in there. Okay, number 7 for me is Bizarre Ride to the Far Side by The Far Side. This is a 90s jazz-infused hip-hop album. Similar to the likes of Jurassic 5 or Souls of Mischief. So, Bizarre Ride to the Far Side is The Far Side's debut album. And whilst their follow-up Lab Cabin California is a much more kind of accomplished and grown-up record, Bizarre Ride just has an impeccable sense of humour and sense of fun, which for me is an important part of hip-hop. The beats are full of sort of tinkling pianos and spurts of saxophone and really thumping bass beats and clattering cymbals, and that sense of humour that I talked about just permeates throughout the entire album. There's a song called Yo Mama, which is essentially just a bunch of Yo Mama jokes. There's a song called Oh Shit, which is just really catchy, bouncy track with a sort of repeated in the intro and chorus of ah shit. And it's just impossible not to join into that. There's other big moments on a song called I'm That Type of Nigga, which is just like a song which opens with who is the nigga in charge over here, and it's just kind of an iconic sing-along moment. And I saw this band live, and it was just a room full of mostly white people singing who is the nigga in charge over here to the far side, who are mostly black. It's just a phenomenal moment. It's just one of those moments that you never forget. There's some tender moments on there as well. It's not all comedy. There's a song called it's not comedy. It's not all light-hearted. There's a song called Passing Me By, which is like a sort of lament to a sort of obsession over a girl at school that was sort of an unrequited love. But then all over the album there are a sort of common aspect of hip-hop albums is the skit, which is a sort of short-lived comedy moment. So there are a few of them. If I Were President, which each member of the band goes through what they would do if they were president. It's usually a ridiculous thing. And there's others that are just about getting high or smoking weed, waiting for the drug dealer to turn up, that kind of stuff. But it's a really 90s album, not in a particularly dated way, just in that kind of peak 90s hip-hop kind of way. And it's just a fantastic album.
Cool.
That's A Bizarre Ride to the Far Side by The Far Side.
So, my number 7 is an album called Walk Among Us by The Misfits. It was released in 1982. There's 13 songs in the album, and again, a lot of the albums that I've included is just under 30 minutes long at 24 minutes and 7 seconds.
Yeah, that's a good length of an album, just get in and out.
Absolutely. Again, I wasn't aware of this at the time until I started doing my research, but this is actually the debut studio album from the American horror punk outfit. I thought that their second studio album, which is called Earth AD/Wolf's Blood, was released before Walk Among Us, to be honest, because the recording on Walk Among Us sounds a lot more polished than some of the other albums. The recording, Earth AD and Wolf's Blood, is terrible. Yeah. It's quite a good album if you can get past that kind of DIY kind of recording sound. It's certainly a lot heavier, but yeah, it takes a wee bit of kind of getting used to. But there's kind of reasons for that. Apparently, I did a wee bit more digging. By the time they'd released Walk Among Us, they'd already recorded Earth AD and Static Age, but never released it until a lot later. And I think that had something to do with the lead singer Glenn Danzig leaving the band and then coming back, and there's been a big...
There's lots of legal
through
the music and stuff, isn't there?
Yeah. But yeah, for those of you who kind of don't know the kind of Misfits and what they're all about, I would describe them as a kind of iconic band in the American punk rock scene. Their Crimson Ghost motif, which they appropriated from a 1946 film of the same name, has kind of been plastered on many a guitar, skateboard, and studded leather jacket.
Like, regardless of whether you know anything about the Misfits or who they even are, you know that logo. Everybody knows that logo. It's just everywhere.
I used to have it on a pair of khaki shorts that I used to wear. I used to kind of cut about in, and they kind of blend material from kind of horror and sci-fi B-movies and kind of TV shows into kind of really good punk and kind of psychobilly songs. There is a kind of classic rock sensibility about them as well. This album in particular is what I've described as a belter from kind of start to finish, and has more Glenn Danzig woes than you can shake a skeletal romaine at. The opening track, 20 Eyes, sets out kind of what to expect from the rest of the album. I would say that, again, you know, with the likes of the Sex Pistols and stuff like that we kind of talked about previously, it's really simple, you know what I mean? Like, anybody could really kind of pick up a guitar and kind of hammer out these songs, to be honest, but it's simple yet effective. In particular, Arthur Googies, who's the drummer, his drum lines are just really infectious. You can't help but like batter along, listen to them. There's been a few times where I've been driving along listening to this album and I've just been battering on the steering wheel, very, very nearly kind of hooting the horn. Especially on tracks like I Turned Into a Martian, which is the second track on the album. Vampira, Nike Go-Go and Violent World. The intro to that, which is, there's only a 6-second drum beat, but it's just pure bliss. Like I said, the album's fantastic. As I said, it kind of blends a lot of material from sci-fi and horror movies, and it ends with a song called Brain Eaters, which sounds like a kind of British oi punk sound. It's kind of reminiscent of the likes of kind of Sham 69, which again is one of these kind of archetypal punk bands, kind of 70s, 80s punk bands. But it's basically about zombies complaining about having brains to eat all the time. And why they can't just get some guts. Why can't they get some fucking rotting guts, as the lyric. So there is a kind of bit of humour kind of peppered throughout the album, even if Glenn Danzig probably takes himself a bit too seriously nowadays. He at one time did have a bit of humour about him.
Cool.
I kind of wish the Misfits just stopped, because I know that they're still touring. Jerry Only, the bassist and the only original surviving member of the band, it's almost like he's kind of flogging a dead horse, to be honest. But in their prime, they were absolutely fantastic. Other kind of albums to kind of check out: Legacy of Brutality, Static Age as well. There's some really good tracks in there, like Teenagers from Mars, Hybrid Moments as well, which is, again, probably a pretty well-known Misfits song. But yeah, if you just want a kind of perfect slice of straight-up punk, then this is where it's at.
Cool. I think what you said about the songs just being quite simple but catchy is like, it's a bit of an art, like fooling people into thinking like it's really easy to like make songs like that. The Ramones were really good at that.
Yeah.
Sort of being able to write perfect, simple but really good songs is a talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
A talent that kind of belies the simplicity of the songs, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was Walk Among Us by the Misfits. Fucking forget who the Misfits are. Okay, so my number 6 is another album from 2005. I don't know how many that is now, but it's quite a few. And it is the debut album from Block Party, Silent Alarm. So, Block Party are a band that probably get lumped in with a fair amount of other sort of indie rock bands from the mid 2000s, like your Kaiser Chiefs or your Cooks or your Razorlight, that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely.
But Block Party are much more than that kind of just indie rock sound. On this debut album, they're using kind of odd combinations of guitars and like modulating the guitar sounds, and their mad slide effects, and it just leads to some really kind of well crafted, technically impressive rock songs. And I mean the drumming on this album is just insane. The sound of the bass is really infectious, and the guitars are just on the right side of that kind of jangly indie guitar sound that they sort of keep their impact without sounding too kind of wimpy, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The shouts of "It's so cold in this house" on Like Eating Glass are like, it's a fantastic like opener to the album, alongside these sort of crooning guitars, and the other lyrics are about drinking poison and eating glass, which actually those lyrics featured on the very first band shirt that I ever bought, which I picked up at Tea in the Park that same year, I think, and it had the lyrics of Like Eating Glass like printed around the side of it. Eventually it got a big hole under the armpit, and I chopped it in half and framed it, but I think it's disappeared at this point. But the album itself is just full of kind of bangers. Use that word a lot, but it's accurate. I mean, there's like whirlwind, screeching guitars, stomping drums, rumbling bass on the song Helicopter. And there's the sort of battling dual guitar riffs of Banquet, with its huge chorus of turning away from the light, becoming adult, turning into myself. I think that's a song about losing your virginity, but it's a really kind of pounding rock song. There are quieter turns on the album as well. There's the absolutely gorgeous Blue Light, the wonderful This Modern Love, which is a truly uplifting and life-affirming song. Other standouts like The Pioneers with its sort of epic opening, If It Can Be Broke Then It Can Be Fixed. And there's the pounding Price of Gasoline with it's got sounds of military marching with this kind of thumping bass line and juddering guitars. What I also love about Block Party is they're not afraid to experiment, and I mentioned before about when I was talking about Tongue and how I kind of discovered Tongue through Block Party and their remixes. I'm not sure if they've done it for all of their albums, but most of their albums they've followed up the studio version with an album of remixes, and the Silent Alarm version is brilliant with just some crazy like danced up versions of Banquet, and there's even a cover of the song Luno performed by Death from Above 1979 on there, and an Errol Alkin version of She's Hearing Voices. So if you look back to that kind of dirge of indie bands around that time, Block Party are one of the ones that have sort of risen above that, and
head and shoulders above.
Head and shoulders above the rest of the pack. They're not a band I've particularly followed throughout their career for some reason or other, but the follow-up to this, A Weekend in the City, is a really good album as well. So that was Silent Alarm by Block Party.
So my number 6 is another artist that needs no introduction either, and it's Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan. It's released in 1966. There's 14 songs in the album. It's a bit of a whopper. It's an hour, just under an hour and a half long, an hour and 22 minutes. It's his 6th studio album from Bob Dylan. Kind of opens with Rainy Day Woman, number 12 and 35. I think it's one of these tracks that kind of appears consistently on kind of Bob Dylan's kind of greatest hits albums. It's kind of jaunty, kind of fun track. It's got that kind of oompa sound to it, kind of similar in a way to The Doors' Whiskey Bar, and the kind of chorus is everybody must get stoned. So yeah, it's kind of delivered in this kind of tongue-in-cheek way, to be honest. I don't know, I'm sure the kind of the students in the 60s at the time probably thought they were sticking it to the man playing this song, and the kind of adults or their parents didn't really get it, that type of thing. However, there's a lot more depth to this album than kind of just that track. In particular, track number 3, Visions of Johanna. Again, it's probably one of my favourite songs of all time. Again, it's a bit of a whopper. As with a lot of the tracks on this album, at just under 8 minutes long, and I really can't do it justice, but I think much like the kind of Decemberists album that we kind of spoke about earlier on, it's like listening to a bit of prose or kind of poetry, and the words and phrases that Bob Dylan is able to conjure up are just magnificent and amazing. Obviously he's kind of well known for being a brilliant lyricist, but it just conjures up some brilliant visuals, and you get that throughout the course of the album. You actually, when you're listening to Visions of Joanna, you feel as if you're in that flat or tenement building that he's describing in the kind of dead of night with all this kind of weird and wonderful kind of stuff going on, and effectively he's pining after Johanna. This kind of character, Johanna. And there's certain lyrics that have kind of stuck with me and continue to stick with me. Just wee ones like these visions of Johanna that conquer my mind. I don't know, I just find it quite powerful. Also, again, from that same song, the kind of ghost of electricity that howls in the bones of our face. I just found, again, I can't do justice, I can't put my finger on it, but I think it just speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Also, track number 6, Stuck Inside of a Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. As the name suggests, it's a kind of bluesy track. I think this album was released not long after Bob Dylan went electric, which was a pinnacle moment in kind of music history. So there isn't any acoustic songs on this album. It's, you know, Bob Dylan with a backing band. So you hear kind of harmonica. Well, obviously Bob Dylan plays his harmonica, albeit not very well, but it's there, and you know, it plays a role within these songs. But there's kind of organs playing, bass, drum, that type of thing. Again, it's the lyrics in this song that have kind of really stuck with me. The third stanza, in particular, third verse, which I'm going to read to you, is quite long. Okay. But there's just something about it that I just like. I don't know what any of it means. I'm not intelligent enough to decipher or, you know, deconstruct these lyrics, but I just like how he puts certain words together. I mean, there have been essays written about Bob Dylan's
I'll bet.
lyrics. So here we go. So I'm not going to sing it in a Bob Dylan voice either. So Mona tried to tell me, stay away from the train line. She said, all the railwaymen just drink up your blood like wine. And I said, oh, I didn't know that. But then again, there's only one I've met, and he just smoked my eyelids and punched my cigarette. As I've said, I've no fucking idea what he means by that. But again, I just like the way he kind of puts certain words together. And it's an album that it's always been there for me, but I'd kind of forgotten about to a certain extent, and it's only recently I've kind of started listening to it again and fell in love with it again. Another standout track on there is Absolute Sweet Marie, and number 14 as well was the last track on the album. Again, it's a bit epic. It's just under 12 minutes long. Is Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, and again, you know, Bob Dylan's an accomplished musician, as is the rest of his backing band, but for the most part it is just a kind of straight up traditional blues rock album, but it's the kind of lyrics that I really dig, to be honest. So yeah, that's me.
He's not an artist I know all that much about. Just know the few tracks even there, but yeah, iconic artist.
Absolutely.
Okay, top 5 now. So my number 5, you mentioned this band earlier on with our album Anthem. It's Less Than Jake, but I've gone for Hello Rockview / Losing Streak. Now, I'm cheating a little bit here because the reason I've picked both these albums is because of the way I purchased it.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's sold as like a double album with the A side being Hello Rockview from 1998 and the B side being Losing Streak from 1996. If I did have to pick between the two, I would plump for Hello Rockview. So I've expressed my love of melodic punk rock, some of the other choices I've got here, but you can't beat a bit of ska punk trumpets thrown in for a bit more extra fun. I think most of what you've said about Less Than Jake is I've similar thoughts.
Yeah,
they're just a really fun band with fun sing-along songs, catchy songs. They play their songs at lightning speed as well, like just really fast, like clanging bass, storms of punk rock riffs and just clattering drums and fucking trumpets. You've got to love those trumpets. So Hello Rockview in particular has got classics like All My Best Friends Are Metalheads, which has got one of the best opening guitar lines I've ever heard. There's songs like Nervous in the Alley and History of a Boring Town and Big Crash, and they're all just these really catchy songs. that have got really big sing-along moments on them. And Losing Streak similarly has a lot of catchy tracks like Sugar in Your Gas Tank. There's Dope Man, which is a song about everyone's favourite hard-working drug dealer. And then there's the 1.5 minutes of perfection, How's My Driving, Doug Hastings, which is just a song about it's a smash and grab gone wrong, basically.
Right, okay.
And it's just a fantastic song. 1.5 minutes. You'll put it on 4 or 5 times in a row. It's just that fun to sing along to. When you listen to these albums back to back, you can tell that they've improved in the sort of 2 years between the albums. They've definitely gotten better as songwriters from album to album. There is a lot to love about Losing Streak, but Hello Rockview has got, I think, a stronger set of songs. But like you were saying before about Anthem, that it felt like a coming of age kind of. There's lots of themes of like leaving home and that sort of thing. That's exact same thing is present on Hello Rockview. So whether that's just an overall kind of theme of Les and Jake's music, but there's just tons of carefree energy and youthful energy all over this album, and it ends on a really kind of a fairly touching song about leaving home and sort of worries about the future and that kind of thing. Both albums are fairly short, about 40 minutes, but they're just a blast, an absolute blast to listen to. And like I said, if I had to choose between the two, it would be Hello Rockview, but it's a good package of albums. They go together really well. So yeah, that was Hello Rockview and Losing Streak by Les and Jake.
So, my number 5 is Dookie by Green Day.
Nice.
It's released on the 1st of February 1994. It contains 15 songs, just over the half an hour mark. And it's the band's 3rd studio album, but it was their first one that they released by Reprise Records. They had previously been on Lookout Records. So the first two, which was 39 Smooth, or as I kind of knew it, 1039 Smoothed Out Slappy Hours. So similar to the albums that you've kind of just discussed. I purchased Green Day's first album as 1039 Smoothed Out Slappy Hours, but it's actually 2 EPs put into the one CD in the form of 1000 Hours and Slappy. And then after that they released the 1991 album Kerplunk, and it contained Welcome to Paradise, which we see them kind of reprising on Dookie, and I don't know if they included it on Dookie for kind of legal reasons or in order to keep the rights to the song. I'm not 100% sure. However, it has since became, one of Green Day's best known tracks. Dookie in itself includes a lot of their kind of most famous songs, such as Longview, When I Come Around, Basket Case.
Yeah. I've got a copy of International Super Hits, which is their greatest hits album, and it's got like 20 songs in it or something, but they're all on it.
Yeah. But for me, the kind of standout tracks have to be Sassafras Roots, which is fun to say, as well as to listen to, which is track number 9 in the album, which is just a song about wanting to spend time with a lassie. The lyrics go, roaming round your house, wasting your time, smoking cigarettes, wasting your time, and then the chorus is, I'm a waste like you, with nothing else to do, may I waste your time too. It's just, I suppose, bubblegum pop punk, really, to be honest. But I can't overestimate the effect that this album had on my life. It was almost like my gateway drug to bigger and better things. And, debate rages over what's punk and what's not punk rock. But for me, this, listening to this album and digesting this album made me want to go and listen to more music, and from there I got onto the likes of the Distillers, Rancid, the Pistols, the Clash, and so on and so forth. So who cares if it's classic punk rock, it's a good album, regardless of how you wish to kind of categorise it. Track number 11, Coming Clean, as well, which I think is effectively a song about come to terms with your sexuality. Again, I didn't really make that much of the song at the time. I enjoyed the song on its pure aesthetic quality, but I didn't really give that much thought to the lyrics until I was a wee bit older and found out that, Billy Joe Armstrong, who's the band's lead singer, is in fact bisexual, and I think he's had relationships with men and women. They later went on to record a song called King for a Day, which was on I want to say the Nimrod album.
Not sure. I've got Nimrod as well.
Which includes a pretty famous Green Day song, Nice Guys Finish Last, which is, again, probably on International Super Hits somewhere. And that's about him dressed up in women's clothes. So it's a theme that has been consistent throughout their body of work. But for me, like I said, when I was kind of listening to this at first, it's, I really dug this song with its pure aesthetic quality and merit. And there's this bridge at the kind of 44-second mark that I absolutely adore. I just love it. In the End is probably one of their kind of heavier tracks. And when I say heavy, there's probably only one Green Day song that I can think of that I would describe as being heavy. And again, that's on the Nimrod album. I think it's called Platypus, which doesn't seem to be in keeping with the rest of Green Day's material. It's Billy Joe Armstrong delivers his lyrics in almost like Corey Taylor-esque fashion. So yeah, it's a real move away from the rest of the stuff that they do. I suppose In the End is just quicker, faster than some of their other stuff. But it's still really fun, it's still really quirky. It kind of talks about Billy Joe Armstrong knowing this girl, and he's watching her from afar, and she's going on to go out with other guys, and he's just wondering when she'll pop back up again and be his special friend till the end, and when will that be? And it's just got this bit where he's like, so I hope that will be there in the end when you come around. They just can't help but kind of sing along to it. There's also FOD, stands for Fuck Off and Die. I think that's the last track on the album. Again, yeah, just a really infectious song. I've kind of described this album as kind of perfect, or as close to perfect as you can possibly get. It's a kind of perfect slice of pop punk, done very fucking well. I don't think you can kind of touch it, and as I said, I can't kind of overestimate the influence it's had in my life, and it was that almost kind of gateway drug onto kind of bigger and better things, and it was a soundtrack of many of my summers growing up. Yeah. It was played on repeat constantly, from the age of kind of 15 onwards.
Well, that was international super hits for me. I absolutely rinsed that, but it's got all their hits.
Yeah.
Hence the name. But yeah, good band.
Yeah, I mean it's a band that I've kind of. I'm gonna sound like a bit of a wanker for saying this, but like, I was going to say it's a band I've kind of outgrown to a certain extent. I like what I like, but I have no real desire to go on and listen to any of their new material.
But, I mean, let's be honest, their new material is mostly garbage. So, you're better sticking to the classics, I think.
Yeah. I would agree with you, but I don't know. I sometimes wonder whether that's me just being a bit of a music snob. But, it's one of those things, like, I think they've always been... They're a commercially successful band, but certainly after the likes of international super hits, there was the release of a B-sides album, Shenanigans, and then obviously American Idiot. They just went nuclear, didn't they, really? Yeah. And I don't know if that distracted from me liking them. I was just like, nah, they're fucking too big.
I wasn't really big on American Idiot, but it's not bad. I liked the album before it, Warning, so I think a lot of people didn't like. It had a few decent tracks on it, but I haven't really listened to much since, and I mostly hear bad things about their albums post American Idiot.
Yeah, I'm going to see them.
Is it on that Hella Mega tour?
Yeah. Remember we were sitting here one time and we listened to their new single, is it Mother or Father of Everything, or God of Everything, and it was awful, so I'm really hoping that we don't hear too much of that stuff.
Well, they've got that new album coming out, so you'll probably hear quite a few tracks from that.
Probably, yeah. I was kind of hoping just to be able to get insanely drunk and just jump about to old songs, but
yeah, you'll get a few.
I'll get some, I'm sure.
It'll be a mixed bag, I imagine.
Aye. And I imagine there'll be a kind of mixed age group as well. Like there'll be fans from, way back when. I mean, it's mad to think that, as mentioned, one of their kind of better known songs that's on Dookie is Longview. I mean, that's a song about smoking and or injecting heroin, and they're now what they are. You know what I mean? It's quite mad, I think, to be honest. But yeah, that's all I have to say about it.
When you write songs as good as that, you deserve to be shot to stardom, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a good band. Okay, so that was Dookie by Green Day. My number 4 is 1992 album Dirt by Alice in Chains. Alice in Chains are a band that regularly get lumped in with other Seattle bands from that sort of grunge era, the likes of Pearl Jam and Nirvana. But like I was saying earlier, pretty much every grunge band sounds different to one another. And Alice in Chains are no exception, and they really don't sound like anyone else. You boil it down, they're essentially a hard rock band, but they have a sort of effervescent yet troubled frontman in Lane Staley and a now legendary lead guitarist in Jerry Cantrell. The name of this album is pretty apt because just everything on here feels like it's coated in a thick crust of grime and filth, and the sort of distorted guitar tones and sickly lead guitar lines and the haunting harmonies are fantastic. And those harmonies that Alice in Chains do are something that no other band does, and Alice in Chains have never bettered it since. They have done it on Dirt. There's a ton of just classic songs on here. Them Bones just crushes, as does Damn That River. There's the weird proggy masterpiece that is Rain When I Die. This has got like a creeping, squealing, cacophonous intro, but it's got this wonderfully melodic chorus where Lane Staley just belts out, I think it's gonna rain when I die. I just love this album. I love how dark it is and how depressing it can be, and just how heavy and brooding and sort of evil it sounds at times. You've got songs like Down in a Hole that dial things back a little bit, but it's still a sort of haunting track, acoustic journey through the sort of darker moments of a drug addict. Frontman Lane Staley passed away from a heroin overdose a decade after this album was released, and his troubles with drug addiction are all over this album. I mean, you've got a song like Sick Man, which is really disturbing and twisted, but it's got these chugging riffs and really tormented sounding vocals. And another song, Junkhead, it's in the name, it follows a similar kind of theme. A lot of people will know the song Rooster, which is the first Alice in Chains song I ever heard. It's got this really gorgeous bass-led intro and sort of crooning, the falsetto ooze that lead into a story about the hellish experiences of war. I love this album. The way it expresses sort of anger and pain and sadness is just, it's really palpable, the way they set a mood, but at the same time it just absolutely slams. The songs are heavy and the riffs are huge, and it's just a massive moment in the career of a huge band. It's my favourite Alice in Chains album. If you're interested in my favourite Alice in Chains songs, you can find a list and a playlist on the website, so I won't spoil that here by telling you my favourite song, but it is on this album. Alice in Chains are still going. They've got a new frontman. They sort of returned in like 2012 or something like that. I could be getting that wrong, but the guy does a pretty good sort of Lane Staley impression. They still do pretty good sort of harmonies and like pretty dark songs, but for me they haven't quite captured the magic that they had back on Dirt. I think it's their peak moment. So that is Dirt by Alice in Chains.
Number 4.
Numero cuatro.
Okay. So, my number 4 is London Calling by The Clash. This album was released on the 14th of December 1979. It contains 19 songs and it's over an hour long. That first track, the album's namesake, London Calling, I would say it just demands that you kind of sit up and listen to it. It's kind of part of the reason why I've chosen it as my ringtone on my phone. But the album as a whole is probably more innovative than a lot of the punk albums in inverted commas that were getting released at the time. There's a lot of kind of different sounds in this album. For example, you've got the likes of Jimmy Jazz, which is the fourth song in the album, which initially sounds like quite a stripped back and kind of simple composition, but then round about the kind of 1.5 minute mark, you've got a kind of horn section that kind of come in, and it just works really well. But it's probably unprecedented at the time for kind of bands like The Clash to kind of introduce stuff like that. Similarly, you've got the likes of Hateful, Rudy Can't Fail, and Revolution Rock that have this kind of big reggae rock influence. It just works really well with kind of Joe Strummer's raw and raspy kind of vocal aesthetic that you can't help but just kind of bop your head along to and have a wee dance. There's also some really experimental numbers as well, which I think were probably quite ahead of their time, to be honest. Guns of Brixton, which was a composition that was written by Paul Simonon, who is the band's bassist. It's interesting that he mentioned Damon Albarn's Gorillaz, because he's played with him on a couple of occasions. And Damon Albarn and Paul Simonon were part of a band called The Good, the Bad and the Queen.
Okay.
I just know of them. I haven't actually listened to any of their material, but it's interesting given what this song's purely written by Paul Simonon, and then he's obviously later went on to do stuff with the Gorillaz, which are quite experimental, I suppose. In fact, this song was later sampled by Cypress Hill.
Nice.
In their song What's Your Number, and it also features Tim Armstrong, which is the kind of lead vocalist from the band Rancid. This was back in 2004. I don't know if they necessarily sample it, but Tim Armstrong's clearly playing the riff from Guns of Brixton. Like, it's undeniable. It's Guns of Brixton. It's got this kind of short, sharp guitar riff that runs throughout the course of the song, but there's also these kind of weird, I've described it as kind of weird and odd plinky plonky guitar sounds. It genuinely sounds as if they're just twanging the kind of guitar strings.
These sort of harmonics or something.
Yeah, I don't know if it's even as technical as that. It does just sound kind of like, really twangy, I suppose, is the kind of best way to kind of describe it. When it kind of precede the chorus of the song, and it's all about kind of guns and gang culture, and that's a theme that kind of pops up throughout the course of the album, as well as just kind of London life in general. Standout tracks for me are, of course, London Calling. As I said, it just kind of demands that you kind of listen to it.
That's the Clash song that everybody knows as well, London Calling.
Absolutely. There's Rudy Can't Fail. Again, I mentioned that earlier on. There's this kind of reggae influence to it. Interestingly, when we went to see the Specials at the Barrowlands a couple of months ago now, probably about 3-4 months ago, they were supported by a band called the Tut Tuts, and they did a version of Rudy Can't Fail. It's worth kind of checking out on YouTube or Spotify. Spanish Bombs as well, which sings about the Spanish Civil War. So I suppose that kind of distracts from London life. It is specifically about the Spanish Civil War, and the chorus is sung in Spanish. The Card Cheat, which is just a masterpiece. It's either Paul Simonon or Mick Jones. It's certainly not Joe Strummer singing this song, and it's a piano piece. It's a piano number, and it's really good. I mean, similar to a lot of the kind of bands and albums that we've covered, it's like listening to a bit of prose, and I really like it. You've got Guns of Brixton, which I mentioned earlier on, and the last song on the album, Train in Vain, which you might not know the album title, but you've probably heard it at some point. It's got this kind of dead, funky vibe that you can't help but kind of shuffle along to. Yeah, I don't really have all that much more to say about London Calling, other than, I suppose it's the band moving away from their early kind of punk origins into kind of new and experimental territory, and it's executed very well. So yeah, well worth a listen.
Nice. Okay, so it's London Calling by The Clash. Okay, my number 3 is Race Car Backwards by Reuben. So Reuben are a band that will forever be close to my heart, and when they split up in 2008 I was pretty devastated, to be honest, and I just kind of missed their kind of particular brand of like post-hardcore and sort of jagged melodic rock, and ultimately the sort of creative powerhouse behind that band, Jamie Lemon, would eventually return to music to kind of fill that sort of ribbon-shaped hole. But in the kind of intervening years, I just became obsessed with Reuben's sort of back catalogue and their deeper cuts and whatnot. But this album, their debut, is the one that started everything. And to be completely honest, I could have picked any of their 3 records. 2005's Very Fast, Very Dangerous is a more sort of straight ahead rock record, and 2007's And Nothing We Trust is a more sort of proggier and inventive affair. But Race Car Backwards is the one I've chosen, mostly for being the album that just kind of slapped me around the face and was like, holy shit, I love this band. So It's heavy, it's melodic, it's creative. I mean, at times it's crushingly heavy, and other times it's really gentle and thoughtful. And if you've heard any of sort of Jamie Lemon's music, you'll understand that he goes from very heavy screaming to really melodic moments in the same song, which is done regularly on this album. When he first came back, he had an album called Muscle Memory, which was really it was kind of a deconstruction of Reuben's sound. It was splitting those softer and harder parts apart, resulting in a double album that had one side of sort of almost folk tunes and another side that was just like full-on hardcore. And it was quite a fascinating album, but Reuben are the sort of fusion of those two things. I mean, it opens with a certified banger in No One Wins the War. Stuck in My Throat is a proper rager. It's got monstrous riffs, terrifying screams. Oh the Shame is fairly jaunty, upbeat rocker. Fall of the Bastille is a really complex tangle of creaking and jangling guitars, rumbling bass and smashing drums. There's an absolute anthem in Freddy Krueger, which is a song about the struggles of being a band, but also a song about having a face like a pizza and a hand like a knife wrap. Let's Stop Hanging Out is another banger, really catchy and super fun to sing along to. Missing Fingers and Our Song are as heavy as anything Reuben or Jamie have ever done, and like Song for Saturday is beautifully uplifting, and Dusk is an absolutely massive closing track. I recently heard Jamie Lemon play this with the original drummer from Reuben, Guy Davis, at Road to Limb Mania, and I was a bit drunk and I nearly cried when they played this song. But shout out to Guy Davis on drums and John Pierce on bass. They're really accomplished on this album, but they just get even better on the later albums. And Jamie Lemon himself has got a real knack for just writing melodies and riffs, and he's got a really technical kind of crunching style of guitar playing that's quite unique. Like I said, their later albums might be more accomplished and more polished, but Race Car is a brilliant debut and the one that started an obsession that continues to this day. So it's Race Car Backwards by Reuben.
So my number 3 is And Out Come the Wolves by Rancid, which was released on 15th of August 1995. It's 19 songs long, or contains 19 songs, and a wee bit longer than some of the other punk albums that are kind of featured so far, or have been featured so far, as it's just under the hour long mark. It's the third studio album from the Californian punk outfit, and probably one of their most popular and commercially successful. Apparently there's a theory that the album title comes from this bidding war that came about around the time that they kind of were looking to release the material on this album. There was quite a lot of record companies that were trying to get them to sign hence the title, Out Come the Wolves. As I said, it contains a lot of the songs that they're kind of most popular for, such as Time Bomb, Ruby Soho. I kind of watched these songs on the likes of P-Rock or Scuzz, and it just made me want to kind of look into them a bit more. There are a couple of heavy tracks in there, kind of mainly in the form of kind of Maxwell Murder, which is the kind of opening track and contains a blistering and frantic 12-second bass solo courtesy of Matt Freeman. But by and large, irrespective of the band's kind of overall look and aesthetic, you know, with the kind of mohawks, them being heavily tattooed, you know, wearing studded leather jackets, I would say that there's kind of more of a kind of heavy classic rock influence on this album, and of course a hell of a lot of ska, which kind of harks back to Tim Armstrong and Matt Freeman's original or kind of first band, Operation Ivy, which if you haven't heard of, I kind of thoroughly recommend that you kind of go and have a kind of look at. Tim Armstrong's often shrill and shaky vocals complements the other vocalist on the album, Lars Frederiksen's bold and brash vocals perfectly, and there's a lot of kind of call and answer type stuff between them throughout the course of the album, which I really dug kind of the first time I listened to, such as You Don't Care Nothing, for example, which is probably one of my kind of most favourite songs on the album. I don't have a fucking clue who Jenny DeMilo is, but I love singing her name and how she doesn't care nothing about me or in fact the band. Other standout tracks, as I've said, Maxwell Murder. I remember going to see Rancid. I've only actually ever seen Rancid once, despite being one of my favourite bands of all time. And that was at the Barrowlands on, I believe, the 5th of December in 2012. So not long after I'd moved to Glasgow. I went with Thomas, our mutual friend, and we were both very hungover at the time. This was a day after going to see Evan Dando, who's the lead singer from the Lemonheads, play their A Shame About Ray album in its entirety with the female vocalist that kind of featured on the album at the time. So yeah, we got really quite drunk that night and very nearly never made it to the Rancid gig. But we decided to drag ourselves along to it. Maxwell Murder was one of the songs that it opened with, and as soon as it came on I was like, to fuck with this, and just went straight in the front, and I was away. I was in my element and absolutely loved it, and to this day it's kind of one of the best gigs I've been to. Other standout tracks in the album include She's Automatic, As Wicked, Avenues and Alleyways, which kind of deal with themes of kind of racism and kind of fighting racism, and interestingly adopt the oi punk aesthetic. There's bits where they go oi oi oi, which is interesting because I think that the oi punk scene very closely related to the skinhead scene, which people tend to think of as being a kind of racist thing, which in fact it never was. Originally the kind of skinhead scene and oi punk thing was, you know, they weren't racist. They listened to a lot of kind of reggae and stuff like that, and as I said, that's quite a big influence on this album, and in particular Old Friend. Again, that's a really bouncy kind of ska song. It's worth a listen. The album as a whole is kind of full of hooks and catchy lines that you can't help but sing along to, and it's perfectly executed ska punk that's kind of guaranteed to please. So that's what I would say about it.
Good. So it was And Out Come the Wolves?
And Out Come the Wolves by Rancid.
Okay. Right, we're almost there. Number 2 on my list is Deja Entendu by Brand New. This came out in 2003. Similarly to what I was saying about Ruben, I could have picked any of sort of 3 of the 5 Brand New albums for this spot, but again, Deja Entendu is the one that got me into the band, and so I've picked it for that reason. Brand New are kind of a band of almost mythical proportions, and every album release is sort of awaited with bated breath by their sort of legions of diehard fans, and for the most part they pretty much never fail to deliver on the promise. In more recent years, with the release of their 5th album, Science Fiction, that legacy has been tainted somewhat with sort of accusations of grooming of young fans levelled at frontman Jesse Lacey. accusations which he has publicly apologised for, but it was the death knell for the band. It should have been their perfect end to a kind of stellar career, but it kind of just faded out a little bit with that sort of controversy that happened. But you can look all that up for yourself if you want to know the sort of ins and outs of what happened there. But Deja Entendu will always be a big part of my life. It just came out at that sort of time. I was still in school, and it was really like nothing I'd ever heard before. It was kind of an unexpected evolution for Brand New. They started out as basically an emo sort of pop punk band on their debut, Your Favourite Weapon, which I hadn't heard before, so I didn't really know any different. But the sort of first hint of change in direction from them came with the moody and brooding post-hardcore anthem Sic Transit Gloria, or Glory Fades, which has just got this devastating bouncy bassline intro and a really quite sort of creepy vocal delivery. But what the band also did on this album was vary their sound in a more sort of acoustic driven territory as well, pretty much erasing their pop punk roots but retaining that sort of emo emotional hit and sort of meaningful lyrics and clever vocal delivery. And it felt like where the previous album was fairly sort of immature in its sort of pop punk roots, this was a band maturing and finding their feet. I mean, Sic Transit Glory was a big song, but tracks like The Quiet Things That No One Knows and Gyneka are absolutely massive, with huge sing-along choruses and just kind of face-melting riffs. And there are plenty of like acoustic moments. I'll Play My Game Beneath the Spinlight, which sort of starts off as an acoustic song but goes into a really surging, overdriven chorus. There's braggadocious Okay I Believe You But My Tommy Gun Don't. And Jesse Lacey's lyrics and vocal melodies are just really catchy and affecting and relatable, but equally the delivery can be quite creepy and sort of breathy at times. It's another one of these albums about growing up and becoming an adult, and all the sort of difficulties and mistakes and worries and things that come along with that process. The follow-up, The Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me, is probably more complex and a more technically proficient album. Their final album, Science Fiction, has a proper shout at being my favourite album of the decade. But Deja Entendu is the album that introduced me to Brand New, and at the time became the band that everyone was talking about. And for that reason, it's number 2 for me. Deja Entendu by Brand New.
So my number 2 is LA Women by The Doors. So the second time this band's featured in my top 20. It was released on the 19th of April 1971. Contains 10 songs and is approximately 48 minutes and 31 seconds long. It's the last album to include Jim Morrison whilst he was still alive. Obviously, you've got the likes of An American Prayer, which we mentioned earlier on, which features Jim Morrison posthumously. It's my favourite Doors album, and it's the album I would recommend anybody who's maybe not all that familiar with the Doors to listen to. Of course, you've got their first self-titled album, The Doors, which was released in 1967, which includes the likes of Break On Through to the Other Side, which is perhaps the song that they're best known for, Alabama Song, Whiskey Bar, Light My Fire as well, which
it's
of
a big
course
one.
Will Young went on to record.
Yeah, is that the better version? The Will Young
absolutely. But yeah, for me, LA Women is the superior album by far. From the second that kind of fat, bluesy bass line kicks in on The Changeling, which is probably my favourite Doors song, you know that you're going to be in for a treat. And again, Jim Morrison delivers his vocals with such suave and charisma. It's just phenomenal. But by the same token, there's times where he's just roaring down the microphone, but it's just so cool. There's also a point in the album on Car Hiss By My Window, which again is just this really kind of classic kind of blues song. He pretends to be a harmonica, or rather, he makes the noise of a harmonica, which I don't think anybody else would get away with,
No.
to be honest. It's only because Jim Morrison that you kind of allow it. There is the odd bit of kind of psychedelia in there in the forms of the likes of La America, for example, which, you know, do appear at odds with the rest of the album. But I would say that the rest of the track kind of more makes up for this kind of low point, I suppose, as it were. And it ends with that kind of iconic Riders on the Storm, which is such an atmospheric piece. I mentioned it earlier on when we were kind of talking about American Prayer. It starts with the kind of sounds of kind of a rainstorm, crashing thunder. There's that driving bass line that comes in, this kind of spiralling keyboard or kind of organ sounds that are provided by Ray Mancherez. And again, you've got Roddy Krieger's iconic guitar sound, which is always there, but often kind of hides away at the beginning of songs, but then comes to the fore and provides these brilliant wee kind of flourishes that just get into your head and you just want to emulate. As I said earlier on, you know, when we were listening to American Prayer, we'd often sing the wee guitar flourishes. And it's the same on this album. It's got a very kind of lounge lizard kind of feel to it, if that makes sense. But as I said before, if you want to listen to the Doors at the height of their kind of game, this is an album for you. As I've said here, pour yourself a large glass of Havana Club and just get wired in. But yeah, there's an extremely influential band and album, particularly when I lived in Aberdeen. It was Ali that got me into them, and it was an album that was played a lot whilst we were kind of sitting drinking and stuff like that. And yeah, again, nostalgia kind of comes into it for me, but I still think it's a really good album. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I've got this album on cassette tape. I found it in a charity shop for like 50 pence.
Right.
I've got it on cassette. That's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah, okay.
Good album. So, right, my favourite album of all time, I suppose, is number one. You weren't confused?
No.
Down to number one. So, if you put a gun to my head and asked me what my favourite band of all time is, I would probably say Pearl Jam. On different days, it's different bands. Probably between Reuben and Pearl Jam for the most part. But yeah, I would probably say Pearl Jam if I was forced to make the choice. So it's probably quite fitting to have their debut album 10 as my number one spot on this list. This is the album that broke Pearl Jam, and their sort of rise to fame has just kind of continued from then. And the band really came storming out the gates with just an instant classic hard rock album that it'll always be remembered as one of the best examples of the genre. They, on later albums, spread their wings in a sort of broader alt-rock territories and were a bit more experimental on those later albums, but as far as rawness and energy and that excitement of a new band, in my opinion, they've never quite matched what they did on 10. So this album will have a special place in my heart anyway, because it was gifted to me by my sister on my 14th birthday. And it's like you said about Green Day, it being a sort of gateway drug for you getting into other types of music. Pearl Jam is the band that opened the doors for me into sort of heavier avenues of music. The first time I heard the opening track, Once, which is a song about a kind of madman killer running about with a shotgun under his coat, just absolutely blew my mind.
No pun intended.
No pun intended, yeah. Songs like Even Flow keep that momentum up with just stomping riffs and Eddie Vedder's iconic crooning vocal embellishments. He's got an almost unintelligible style of singing. You really have to pay close attention to try and understand what the hell he's singing. And often it's just gibberish. There's a few songs in Pearl Jam's career where the lyrics are pretty much gibberish, but it sounds good, which is probably the most important thing.
That's all that matters.
There's the song Alive, which is probably Pearl Jam's, other than Jeremy, is probably Pearl Jam's most well-known song. It's been played to death over the years, but it's still a pretty powerful song, and it deals with an inappropriate relationship between a mother and her child. There are just tons of intense rock songs on this album, but then there's also the haunting beauty of Black. It's got this unforgettable lyrical moment on it, which is probably the moment I knew that I was in love with this band, and it just goes, I know someday you'll have a wonderful life. I know you'll be a star in someone else's sky, but why, oh why, can't it be mine? And I said that sometimes Eddie Vedder's lyrics are unintelligible and nonsensical, but certainly in that passage, he's very astute and can write some real sort of poetic and beautiful lyrics. And it's a moment that just gives me chills every time I listen to it. I mentioned Jeremy before. It's a big controversial song about... it's a fictional account of a boy going on a rampage in a school. Many people think that it's actually a true story, but it's sort of based on reality, but in the end it's a fictional song about a massacre in a school. It's actually, when I'm drunk enough to do karaoke, that is my go-to song, because I've just sang it to death on my own so much that is the song that I go to. The closing track on the album Release is another very tender song similar to Black, and I'm going to mention Mad Cool Festival again. The reason I was there was to see Pearl Jam for the first time ever, and when they played Release, I mean, again, that's a fight the tears back sort of moment. It's just a beautiful song. I fucking love this album, and I can't say a lot more about it. One of the other things about this album is it just, whenever I hear it, it just lifts my mood. And I remember one summer after uni, I'd come home and I had to do a summer job in, the local shortbread factory, Walkers, and I'd worked there the summer before, and I was just, my first day, I was so depressed to be back in that factory. But then Alive came on the radio and it just made everything better again. So it's just, this album has just got the power to turn me from being a sad, unhappy bastard into a really happy kind of person. It's just got that magic about it.
Aye. It's interesting you mentioned Walker's Shortbread Factory, because I'm also going to mention Walker's Shortbread Factory. Okay. Big up the Shortbread Kiddies.
Big up the Shortbread Massive. Okay, so...
The Petticoat Posse.
Petticoat Tail Posse. Finger Brigade.
The Finger Fuckers? I don't know. I can't think of a name or a word for a collection of folk that starts with F.
I can think of one, but let's not go there. Okay. So I don't really have anything more to say about 10. It's a fucking masterpiece, and again it's a debut album that just propelled a group of kind of like, not down and outs, but just sort of like young kind of punk kids in shorts and baggy t-shirts to fucking massive rock stars, whether they liked it or not.
Yeah.
That's my number one album of all time.
Okay. So there's probably no prizes for guessing what my favourite album of all time is. Admittedly, I kind of have cheated a wee bit, and that's only because this album is technically two albums in one. However, I bought it as one album, similar to your kind of Les and Jake album
already. So,
and so the two albums were Surfer Rosa, which was released in 1988, and Come On Pilgrim, which was released in 1987. But when I bought the CD, it was kind of packaged as Surfer Rosa, Come On Pilgrim. I still remember when I bought it. It was the same day I got my lip pierced. And I was working Walker Shortbread at the time as well. The lip piercing was fairly short-lived, but the album's stuck with me for years and continues to be my favourite album of all time. I think it really kind of hit me because, as you've probably seen, and heard, through most of my formative years, I was just listening to punk rock. Like Green Day, Les and Jake, Rancid, the Misfits, Pistols, The Clash, all that type of stuff. And this was something that was unlike anything I'd heard before. And as I said, I've kind of been hooked on the Pixies ever since. It opens with Bone Machine, which itself opens with a kind of relatively simple drum beat, which is provided by kind of David Lovering, and then Kim Deal's kind of smooth bass line just kind of cuts through this around the kind of 10-second mark. And then round about the kind of 18-second mark, there's just this explosion of kind of untamed and unyieldy kind of guitar sounds that are provided courtesy of Joey Santiago. And of course, before the man in the form of Black Francis makes his announcement that this song is for Carol, and it just, as I've said with kind of some of the other songs that we've mentioned previously, it just kind of demands that you kind of sit up and listen to it. And I would say that this formula kind of very much sets the precedent for kind of the rest of the album. Most of the songs follow a kind of traditional verse, chorus, verse pattern, but the songs themselves are kind of anything but ordinary. Like I've said, kind of Dave Lovering and Kim Deal provide a very kind of tight rhythm section, whilst as with kind of Beneath the Eyrie, which is the kind of latest offering by the Pixies, Joey Santiago provides a lot of interesting texture and layers on this album, and more so on any of the other albums. You feel as if there's a kind of desperation in his playing, as if he's desperately trying to get as much kind of weird and wonderful sounds out of his guitar. And this is perhaps most notable on songs such as Vamos, for example, which opens with this kind of strange, menacing, almost kind of Western style guitar riff motif and kind of incomprehensible chatter and noise. But it's at that kind of 1:15 mark that you see this kind of aforementioned kind of desperation take hold. There's a lot of fuzz and reverb, and it's almost like hearing what I've described as a guitar getting murdered.
Yeah.
but kind of in a good way. He's not using any effects or pedals. He's literally, rubbing it up and down his guitar amp and rubbing things up against it and what have you, which you can see in some of his kind of the live kind of footage. Another way how I've described it is he's almost trying to break it in and kind of tame it and kind of get it under his command. It's almost like you're trying to break in a wild horse type of thing. But it's definitely a standout track and one to listen to and or experience. It's quite long. I mean, it's a kind of 4 minutes, 24 seconds of what I've described as madness, but kind of beautiful madness.
Yeah.
And last left to come and talk about kind of the lead vocalist Black Francis, who alternates from singing singing pretty straight to singing in a shrill falsetto voice, which often complemented brilliantly by Kim Deal on the likes of kind of Break My Body and Gigantic, and of course Where's My Mind, which is probably their most famous track to date.
Yeah, I love Gigantic and Where's My Mind, both phenomenal songs.
I was lucky enough to see the Breeders play at the O2 ABC last year or the year before, sometime after it burned down.
Before it burned down, you mean?
And yeah, so the Breeders, for those who don't know, is Kim Deal's band that she formed after she left the Pixies, and she came on, did an encore, and she played Gigantic, and I was like, I can fucking die happy, man, now. Like, it was just brilliant. I've heard the Pixies play Gigantic before, but it's never been with Kim Deal.
It's in a more intimate sort of setting as well. The O2 ABC's relatively small.
Yeah, was.
What it was, R.I.P.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like I said, Frank Black goes from, singing pretty straight, singing this kind of falsetto voice, to just howling maniacally down the microphone, and I just love it. Like, I just absolutely love it. I can't get enough of it. Like, I just can't get enough of it. I'd love to be able to emulate it, but I obviously can't. I remember watching a documentary called Gouge Away, in which Tom York from Radiohead said that he thought the band sounded like a horror record, or the album sounded like a horror record, and that he thought it sounded quite violent, which is something I would kind of have to agree with, to be honest. He said they had a very particular image of them in his head of kind of nasty little vicious people. And although I would agree with that kind of sentiment to a certain extent, particularly with songs like, Something Against You, Broken Face, and of course the aforementioned Vamos, there's occasions on there where they provide genuine melodic genius, such as on Gigantic, as we mentioned, and obviously Where's My Mind, which next to Debaser, Monkey's Gone to Heaven, and Here Comes Your Man is probably the track that they're best known for. But you've also got likes of Brick is Red, for example, which is a track where you can really hear the juxtaposition of Black Francis' acoustic rhythm guitar and Joey Santiago's electric. And I know that that's something that they did try and recreate in their kind of latest offering, kind of Beneath the Eerie. You can also hear it on tracks like Els de Canta and Nimrod's Son. Yeah, I can't overestimate the influence that this album's had on my life as well. Kind of talk about Walker Shortbread. I listened to this on repeat on the bus up and down there, and just like Pearl Jam album, it's an album that never stops making me happy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Good. They're a fucking great band.
yeah, they are.
Okay. Yeah, that was a fairly
Epic undertaking.
a marathon. I'll do a proper outro and stuff another time, I think.
that's quite alright, man. No,
Okay.
you have to think about getting home.
Aye, exactly. Thanks again for checking out the Scratchcast, and I hope you enjoyed listening to us ramble on about our favourite albums. Remember to check out the singles Underneath by Code Orange and Your Light by The Big Moon, and let us know your thoughts ahead of the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us on whatever platform you listen to us on. We're available on all the biggest streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube. Make sure you also check out our website at theheadscratcher.com or at The Head Scratcher on Facebook and Instagram, or at ScratcherHead on Twitter for regular, alternative pop culture articles, playlists and podcast episodes. Until next time, this has been The Scratchcast.
It's not finished. It's finished.
Fucking trumpets, you've got to love those trumpets.